On the evening of Thanksgiving in 1984, 14-year-old Wendy Jerome departed from her friend's residence in Rochester, New York, but tragically never returned home. Earlier that day, Wendy and her father, Wayne, had shared the joy of preparing Thanksgiving dinner together, creating a warm family moment. Wendy's mother, Marlene, a dedicated nurse at Beechwood Nursing Home, had a demanding work schedule. After their meal, Wendy assisted her father with the dishes, while Marlene took a well-deserved nap upstairs. They had planned to enjoy dessert together once the chores were completed, and Marlene was awake. Meanwhile, Wendy's younger brother, Bill, was engaged in play. Having recently celebrated her 14th birthday on November 1st, Wendy felt a newfound sense of independence and sought to explore her autonomy. She requested her father's permission to walk to her friend Susie Berman's house, which was just a few blocks away. With her curfew set for 8 p.m. and the time being 7 p.m., Wayne agreed, confident she would return shortly. However, Marlene soon awoke with an unsettling feeling and hurried downstairs, inquiring, "Where is Wendy?" Wayne reassured her that Wendy was simply visiting a friend and would be back soon, encouraging her to remain calm. As 8:15 p.m. approached and Wendy had yet to return, anxiety began to mount. Although it was only 15 minutes past her curfew, Wendy was known for her punctuality. They attempted to contact the Keller family, but initially received no response. After several hours, they finally connected with them. Marlene's immediate question was, "Is Wendy with you?" Susie's mother, taken aback, urged, "Marlene, hang up and call the police immediately." Shortly thereafter, Marlene's deepest fears were realized when Wendy was discovered in an alcove near School 33. A 22-year-old individual found her lifeless body situated between schools 33 and 11. He recounted his evening, mentioning that as he made his way to a bar, he spotted an individual lying on the ground. Initially, he chose to disregard the scene, presuming the person was merely intoxicated. However, upon a more thorough examination, he was met with the sight of blood. Overcome with fear, he sought refuge at a friend's residence before returning to the location to verify his earlier observations, ultimately deciding to alert the authorities. When the officers arrived, they quickly discerned that the individual was beyond help, having suffered a brutal assault and left to endure her final moments in solitude. Within 5 minutes, the police arrived at Marlene's doorstep to deliver the harrowing news about Wendy. Her mother noted that the schoolyard where Wendy was found was not part of her usual path to Susie's house. Marlene speculated that, nearing her curfew, Wendy may have attempted to visit another friend nearby, opting for a shortcut through the school grounds. The preliminary investigation uncovered evidence of severe blunt force trauma, including a fractured skull resulting from a significant impact. It was clear that she had been viciously attacked. Dr. Nicholas Forbes performed a medical examination on Wendy's remains, concluding that the severe trauma to her skull had ultimately claimed her life. The autopsy further indicated that at least 2 distinct objects had been employed to inflict her bruises and injuries, with the possibility that hands were also involved. The marks were unmistakable, evidence of both blunt force trauma from various objects and sharp force trauma inflicted by something capable of slicing through her flesh, potentially a knife or shard of glass. The family struggled to cope with this devastating loss. Wayne and Marlene's marriage crumbled under the weight of grief, as she harbored deep-seated blame towards her husband for the tragedy. Bill Jerome, Wendy's younger brother, was engulfed by fear following the brutal loss of his sister. He lived in constant anxiety, terrified that the perpetrator remained at large. For the first time, darkness became a source of dread for him. He hesitated to venture outside to play, and when he did, he remained vigilant and suspicious of those around him. After the divorce, Wayne relocated to Florida, while Marlene grew increasingly dissatisfied with the police's handling of the case. Almost 10 years elapsed, and Marlene relentlessly sought to uncover the truth of that fateful night. Denied access to the crime scene, the morgue, and even the photographs, she felt an insatiable need for clarity. After being informed by investigators that Wendy had been unconscious and unaware of her fate, Marlene insisted on viewing the crime scene images. They had assured her that Wendy had passed away peacefully. However, upon receiving the autopsy report, she was confronted with a stark reality. The document, laden with references to defensive wounds, ignited a fury within her. She felt deceived, convinced that they had misled her when she inquired about Wendy's struggle against her attacker. The sense of betrayal was profound. When she finally laid eyes on the photographs, a semblance of closure washed over her. The haunting image of Wendy, exposed and vulnerable, was one she could hardly bear, as it was a sight she knew her beloved daughter would never have wished to present to the world. For 9 agonizing years, Marlene endured this torment until the photographs offered her a fragment of solace. They revealed what the investigators had long known. Wendy had been dressed in jeans and a charming brown sweater jacket, adorned with whimsical unicorns and hearts. Her cherished pink hood, always by her side, was draped over her battered visage. It became evident that her assailant had allowed her to dress before committing such a brutal act. The investigators had reassured Marlene that Wendy had departed in peace, blissfully unaware of the horrors that awaited her, including the violent blows to her head. Yet, the existence of defensive wounds painted a harrowing picture of a young woman fighting for her life, fully cognizant of the terror unfolding around her, an unsettling contradiction to the investigators' claims. Each year, on November 1st, the family mourned, tears flowing freely as they remembered Wendy. Yet Marlene held on to the hope that one day justice would prevail. In the 1980s and 90s, DNA technology was still in its infancy, but as time progressed, forensic advancements would eventually pave the way for the apprehension of the perpetrator. Officer Paul Boccaccino engaged with over 30 residents from the neighborhood a mere 6 days following the tragic passing of Wendy. The investigative team meticulously preserved the evidence at the crime scene, which included items such as a cigarette pack, a lighter, strands of the perpetrator's hair, and Wendy's clothing. However, certain aspects of the investigation remained insufficiently explored. A witness was interviewed, yet he was not deemed a primary suspect. His actions, first visiting a friend's residence and then returning to the scene, raised considerable suspicion. Notably, this witness possessed the same hair type discovered at the crime scene, warranting a more thorough investigation. Tragically, 6 years later, he took his own life, leaving one to ponder whether this act was an implicit admission of guilt. Initially, investigators had their sights set on another local individual who reported an assault that night, but he was subsequently cleared through blood typing analysis. In 1984, an 11-year-old Julie Hahn became aware of the heartbreaking murder of Wendy Jerome, a case that would profoundly influence her life and career trajectory. The haunting nature of Wendy's case lingered in the collective memory of Rochester for years, embedding itself within the community's consciousness. This early encounter with such a tragic event ignited in Hahn a fervent sense of justice, propelling her toward a career dedicated to making a meaningful impact. Ultimately, she ascended to the role of chief prosecutor in the Major Felony Bureau of the Monroe County District Attorney's Office. Her unwavering commitment to justice led her to revisit Wendy's case in 2011, where she approached the evidence with renewed vigor, conducting DNA analyses that included cross-referencing the DNA of the witness who had taken his own life. Should the DNA not align with that of the witness, Hahn had intentions to explore other items recovered from the scene, such as the cigarette pack and lighter, employing cutting-edge high-sensitivity DNA technology. By 2016, Hahn and her team recognized the potential for further evidence testing, culminating in familial DNA testing conducted in April 2019. By July, a new roster of potential suspects emerged, bolstered by evidence derived from Wendy's clothing and biological traces found at the crime scene. In 2020, authorities embarked on a familial DNA search, a groundbreaking method that enables the examination of DNA profiles from relatives. This innovative approach meant that any family member sharing blood ties could be scrutinized if their relative's DNA was catalogued in the database. This led them back to an individual who had been questioned years prior, Timothy Williams, who was merely 20 years old at the time of Wendy's tragic incident and lived next door. The police discreetly obtained a DNA sample from him while he was in Florida, and the results confirmed a match with the evidence collected from the crime scene. After 36 long years, a definitive match was finally established. Williams was apprehended on September 9th, 2020. Among the investigators was Hahn, who reached out to Marlene. Marlene had remarried Wayne, who succumbed to cancer in 2011. On that fateful Thursday, 36 years after that Thanksgiving night, she received the long-awaited call. Timothy Williams became the first individual in the state to face trial based on an arrest stemming from familial DNA evidence. During the proceedings, Williams asserted that he had engaged in consensual relations with Wendy and denied any wrongdoing, citing a fear of being accused of assault if he had come forward earlier. Years ago, he had been questioned as a neighbor, but he had misled the authorities. Now in custody, his narrative shifted. He claimed to have met her at a corner store, believing her to be of legal age and in a relationship. However, the district attorney refuted his assertions, emphasizing the savage nature of Wendy's injuries, which starkly contradicted Williams's account. Wendy's mother poignantly remarked on his claims, "My daughter Wendy was the sweetest, the most caring little girl in the whole world. I just want everybody to know, no matter what was said, it was not true. She was and always will be my heart." The trial initially encountered a significant hurdle when a mistrial was declared due to juror misconduct. Nevertheless, a subsequent trial culminated in the conviction of Williams on 3 counts of second-degree murder. On April 17, 2024, Justice Alex Renzi of the New York State Supreme Court imposed a sentence of 25 years to life upon the 60-year-old Williams, to be served in the New York State Department of Corrections. District Attorney Dorley expressed her relief and gratitude towards the diligent Rochester police investigators, asserting that the maximum sentence was the only fitting response. She underscored that, after all these years, Timothy Williams could not evade justice for the atrocious acts he perpetrated against Wendy. Present in the courtroom was Wendy's mother, Marlene, who, following the guilty verdict, conveyed a bittersweet sense of closure. After 36 long years, Timothy Williams had thought he had eluded justice, but thanks to the unwavering determination of Julie Hahn and a mother's relentless quest for justice, he was finally identified, condemned, and incarcerated where he rightfully belonged. At last, Wendy Jerome's family found a measure of closure, and the faceless specter that haunted their dreams was confined. Marlene's poignant words after the sentencing echoed, "Will it ever be over for me? No, but this door is closed." Imagine a tranquil morning drive transforming into a harrowing ordeal. How does a beloved individual within a community become ensnared in an unforeseen act of brutality? And what are the ramifications when justice eludes the grasp of time for nearly half a century? Daniel Ashton Walker was a treasured soul, revered and cherished for his kind spirit and steadfast readiness to lend a helping hand. Yet, the peace of his life was violently disrupted on that fateful morning of October 1st, 1974. Little did he know a sinister shadow was creeping over the calm of his existence. The day began like any other. devoid of any forewarning of the tragedy that awaited him. As the sun ascended, casting a warm glow of orange and pink across the sky, Daniel continued with his routine, blissfully unaware that his world was on the brink of devastation. His Volkswagen van was parked along Interstate 40, approximately 60 miles west of Needles in San Bernardino County, California, with an 18-year-old hitchhiker, Ken Robinson, as his companion. They had chosen to pause their journey for a moment of rest. The previous day, Daniel had packed his van and bid farewell to his family in Santa Ana, embarking on his return home. The vast California desert sprawled before them, offering a fleeting escape from the monotony of everyday life. As the clock struck 6 a.m., Daniel and Ken settled in, ready to enjoy a brief interlude in their travels. The serene stillness of the early morning enveloped them as they reclined in the van, relishing the calm before the storm. However, their peaceful respite was abruptly shattered when Daniel was jolted awake by the piercing sound of gunfire. An unseen assailant had emerged from the shadows, unleashing a torrent of bullets that shattered the tranquility of the morning. Caught off guard and vulnerable, Daniel was struck multiple times. In the midst of chaos, Ken, overwhelmed by fear and driven by the primal urge to survive, skillfully eluded the impending danger, making his escape from the harrowing scene. As the early morning darkness enveloped him, he frantically sought assistance. His efforts bore fruit when he managed to flag down a passing driver, who promptly alerted the authorities. Emergency responders arrived with urgency, swiftly transporting Daniel to a nearby hospital. The medical team exerted every effort to stabilize him, yet, despite their relentless dedication, Daniel ultimately succumbed to his injuries, his life tragically extinguished. Daniel Ashton Walker, a cherished young man on the brink of his 22nd birthday, was lost to the world. Law enforcement, fueled by unwavering resolve, meticulously scoured the area for any clues that might unveil the identity of the elusive assailant. As the investigation into Daniel's untimely death progressed, detectives initially theorized that robbery was the motive behind the shooting. However, perplexing revelations soon emerged, casting shadows of doubt on this assumption. Strangely, the assailants had only stolen a mere $80 from Daniel, leaving behind a significant sum of $600 in travelers' checks. The enigma deepened when it became apparent that the attackers had not taken Daniel's motorcycle, stereo system, or the luggage stowed in his van. Armed with a detailed description of the suspect's vehicle, law enforcement officials across California, Nevada, and Arizona were alerted, diligently stopping and searching every gold van that matched the reported likeness. Investigators also interviewed a delivery man who recounted that, earlier that morning, the suspects had waved him down after their gold van became ensnared in the sand. One of the suspects informed the delivery man of their intended journey to Indiana, mentioning that they possessed a shotgun to shoot down posts and sagebrush for tire traction should they find themselves stuck. The delivery man graciously assisted in towing the van, refusing any form of payment for his kindness. The collaboration among law enforcement agencies across state borders highlighted the gravity of the situation. This demonstrated their dedication to uncovering the truth and ensuring that those responsible for this senseless act would face justice. Although Ken's testimony offered some insightful details, the true motive behind the attack remained unclear. As the investigation unfolded, detectives considered various theories to understand the seemingly arbitrary act of violence. They looked into the possibility of a targeted assault driven by personal reasons, as well as the chance that it was a random act of hostility. The crime's remote setting, taking place along a lonely stretch of highway, added to the complexity of the case. It became challenging to determine whether the assailants had planned the attack in advance or if they had acted on an unexpected opportunity. Despite the diligent efforts of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office, they could not bring the case to a close. Over the span of 50 years, the Sheriff's Department's cold case team periodically revisited the investigation, persistently seeking new leads. However, the relentless passage of time proved to be a significant challenge, and the team was unable to uncover any actionable information to resolve the case of Daniel Ashton Walker. In a noteworthy turn of events on November 15, 2023, the cold case team reignited their investigation. Their renewed focus led to the identification of the notorious serial offender, 73-year-old Thomas Eugene Creech, as the main suspect in January 2024. This significant development stemmed from critical information, including corroborated intimate details from Creech's own accounts regarding the homicide case. To validate their findings, the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office worked in conjunction with the Ada County District Attorney's Office in Idaho. This collaboration has further strengthened the case against Creech, prompting the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office to deliberate on the next steps in seeking justice for Daniel Walker. Thomas Eugene Creech, a convicted criminal with a troubling history of multiple confessions, became a person of interest in Daniel's case shortly after his clemency hearing. As Idaho's longest-serving inmate, he faces execution for several murders and has 5 convictions to his name. However, some speculate that he may be linked to over 40 homicides, a belief stemming from his 1975 trial confession, where he claimed to have killed 42 individuals across more than a dozen states. While authorities have corroborated Creech's claims regarding Daniel's case, his public defender has raised questions about the timing of these admissions, suggesting that previous attempts to connect him to various murders lacked solid evidence. Ada County prosecutors have characterized Creech as an unrepentant, manipulative sociopath, hinting that his recent disclosures could be a strategic maneuver to evade execution. The seriousness of the case, combined with the intricacies of Creech's personality, adds further complexity to the quest for justice for Daniel. With Thomas Eugene Creech now identified as the main suspect in Daniel Walker's case, the San Bernardino County community is inching closer to closure. After nearly 5 decades, justice may finally be within reach in this heartbreaking instance of senseless violence, offering a degree of comfort to Daniel's family and the wider community. Daniel's brother, Doug Walker, has self-published a book on Amazon titled Daniel, My Brother, Mystery in the Mojave, dedicating 2 chapters to his brother's character. In their father's final letter to Daniel, he expressed, "Everyone speaks so highly of you, always and without exception." The San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office has yet to announce whether they will pursue extradition and prosecution of Creech. The spokeswoman stated that they have received the reports and are maintaining ongoing communication with both the Ada County District Attorney's Office and their investigative team in San Bernardino County to ensure justice is pursued in this case. Doug Walker expressed that his concept of justice does not automatically entail the execution of Creech. He remarked, "As long as they can establish that the responsible party is indeed the perpetrator, I am satisfied. The decision regarding life or death is not mine to make. It is beyond my authority." On a brisk October evening in 2014, within the serene suburbs of Laval, Quebec, Canada, the life of 23-year-old Janique D'Arc was tragically extinguished during a vicious attack on a bike path. This heinous act left investigators perplexed and the community in a state of mourning as the assailants seemed to evaporate into thin air. For years, her loved ones clung to the hope of resolution, even as leads grew increasingly scarce and answers remained frustratingly out of reach. However, nearly a decade after this horrific event, a significant breakthrough would rekindle the pursuit of justice. Janique D'Arc was a radiant and spirited young woman, brimming with promise and aspirations. Residing in Longueuil, Quebec, she was celebrated for her infectious enthusiasm and compassionate spirit. At the age of 23, she was navigating her passions and forging her future. In her leisure time, Janique relished outdoor pursuits, particularly walking and cycling, often traversing the picturesque bike paths that adorned Longueuil, a cherished activity that would be abruptly severed by tragedy. On the fateful evening of October 21st, 2014, her routine stroll home from work transformed into a harrowing ordeal. On a dimly lit bike path, as she traversed her familiar surroundings, savoring the tranquility, she was suddenly assaulted with an iron bar, leading to her untimely demise. The aftermath left her family and friends grappling with profound sorrow and a multitude of unanswered questions, igniting a wave of support and demands for justice. In the wake of her tragic death, Longueuil police acted promptly, initiating a thorough investigation into the circumstances of the case. A year later, a modest white cross and a commemorative plaque were placed in her honor at the site of the attack. Concurrently, Janique D'Arc, Janique's mother, launched a petition advocating for greater governmental support for families affected by violent crime. Since the tragic loss of her daughter, she has struggled with sleepless nights, been compelled to leave her job, and found herself unable to afford the therapy sessions necessary for professional support. She implores, "I am asking for them to recognize parents of slain children as victims." Her desire is for the government to enhance services and provide financial assistance. She believes that the state should cover all psychotherapy costs for parents mourning a child lost to violent crime, for as long as their healthcare providers deem it essential. Furthermore, she advocates for compensation for parents who can no longer work due to the devastating impact of their child's death. Over the years, the investigation into Janique's case remained ongoing, with authorities offering periodic updates, assuring her family of their dedication to apprehending the perpetrator. Progress in forensic technology and diligent police efforts sustained hope for Janique's loved ones, who endured the painful wait for resolution. After nearly a decade of unwavering pursuit of justice, the Longueuil police announced a significant breakthrough in Janique D'Arc's case. In May 2024, it was revealed that Michael McDuff Jalbert, aged 35, had been arrested. He was the individual who initially contacted the police in 2014 to report the incident and was taken into custody shortly thereafter. However, due to a lack of evidence at that time, he was released without charges, leaving the case unresolved. This time, he faces charges of first-degree murder in connection with the brutal crime that had shocked the community in October 2014. This arrest marked a pivotal moment in a case that had left both Janique's family and investigators in a state of frustration and longing for answers. Chief Inspector Pierre Duquette of the Longueuil Agglomeration Police Service characterized the investigation as intricate, highlighting that advancements in forensic science had finally produced crucial new evidence. The specifics of this significant development remain confidential to uphold the sanctity of the ongoing legal proceedings. However, Duquette reassured the public that the unwavering commitment to uncover the truth and bring solace to Janique's family has remained steadfast. He expressed heartfelt appreciation for the strength and patience exhibited by Janique's parents, Monique Dalcourt and John Gandolfo, throughout the years. The community, profoundly impacted by Janique's tragic loss and the prolonged quest for her assailant, reacted with a blend of relief and somber contemplation as news of the arrest circulated. Vigils and tributes were rekindled throughout Longueuil, celebrating Janique's legacy and recognizing the relentless efforts of law enforcement in bringing resolution to her case. Outside the courtroom, Janique's father conveyed to reporters that, while nothing can restore his daughter, the family can now find a semblance of closure. Our daughter Janique was brutally and senselessly taken from us, a victim of a deranged individual who must face the consequences of his actions. Our family now requires time to come to terms with this. Nick Gandolfo, Janique's brother, fondly remembers her as a joyful and kind-hearted young woman who radiated positivity. He remarked, "It was an aura that surrounded her. I always knew that on my worst days I could turn to my little sister, and she would brighten my spirits. Just reflecting on it now brings a smile to my face." As Macduff Jalbert awaits his forthcoming court date, the arrest has ignited a glimmer of hope that justice will ultimately prevail for Janique D'Arc, whose vibrant existence was tragically extinguished.